I have a weird soft spot for old games. Most sane people would look at something like Alone in the Dark from 1993 or The Secret of Monkey Island from 1990 and completely ignore them in favor of more modern, polished games. But I'm not sane enough for that. I really love getting to play through older games and see how they differ from the things I play nowadays, or even how they differ from what I grew up on. A lot of these games have been fully abandoned by their original creators, making it impossible to get your hands on a legitimate copy. There are tons of different websites for these abandonware games that I really enjoy browsing through, and one that happened to catch my eye recently was a game called 5 Days a Stranger. Released by Ben Yahtzee Croshaw on September 22, 2003, 5 Days a Stranger is an indie point-and-click horror murder mystery adventure game that gets a lot of praise online for its writing quality. That's usually the biggest thing I look for in games, the story. It's how I was able to enjoy games like Paranoiac with less than stellar gameplay but really interesting stories. The fact that it's an indie game makes me pretty excited. It means that despite the fact that I was technically alive when it came out, I still get to see a lot of the older game design choices that interest me. A single indie dev isn't usually able to put out something at the level of quality of an entire development team, especially in the early 2000s. 5 Days a Stranger was created entirely in Adventure Game Studio, or AGS, an open source development software released all the way back in 1997. The game follows Trilby, an infamous cat burglar and self-proclaimed gentleman thief who attempts to rob the manor of a recently deceased millionaire, only to find himself trapped inside through seemingly supernatural means. As the name suggests, Trilby will find himself trapped there over the course of 5 days, alongside several other captives. Today I'm going to walk you through my experience with the game to determine if it's as good as the online critics say. With older games made for older operating systems, getting them to run smoothly isn't as easy as one might want. This one wasn't too bad though. I ended up getting this game directly from the developer's website since he had the special editions of the entire series up for free, which was super nice of him. The game opened just fine, but attempting to run it in full screen will completely squish the game to one corner of my screen and change the colors into this weird psychedelic pink and green. Thankfully, launching it windowed completely fixes this issue, and I was able to run it on Windows 10 with no problems from there on out. The game opens with a cutscene showing Trilby, self-proclaimed gentleman thief, on his way to a job. He only steals from the rich and only takes what, in his eyes, won't be missed. Recently, the last member of the incredibly rich DeFoe family died without any heirs. Trilby plans to break into DeFoe Manor, steal the untouched and undistributed valuables, then escape without anyone knowing he was ever there. He uses a grappling hook disguised as an umbrella to climb the outer wall to the second story, stealthily narrating his actions out loud. Despite the fact that this building is supposed to be completely deserted, footsteps can be heard through the walls. Maybe Trilby isn't as alone as he thought. But super duper cool and talented thief man doesn't care. There's a safe sitting in the corner ripe for the picking, and that is his first priority. One of the trickier things about computer games from this era are the instructions. Tutorials weren't built into games, I assume because of file sizes in that era of the internet, and would instead be in little text files in the same folder as the game. The one that I read taught me the basics, like how to walk to, look at, interact with, and speak to different people and things. Unfortunately, I made a big mistake early on by not reading the whole file. I just looked at the basic controls and went on my merry way, ignorant to the horrific mistake that I had just made. But that won't come back to bite me till later. You mainly use 4 keys and the mouse to control this game. F1 through F4 change what mode you're in, and left clicking lets you take the action assigned to that mode. For example, F1 is the walk button. If you press that, then click on something, you'll walk to it. If you press F2, the look button, and then click on something, then you'll look at it and Trilby will make a comment. All the actions that you can take have icons in the same order that they would appear in your keyboard in the bottom corner. You can also right click to open up your inventory, but there isn't much in there for right now. I really like the comments that Trilby makes when you're examining things. He's super judgmental and kind of egotistical, if that weren't already apparent by him literally narrating himself mid-crime. Intentionally or not, all his comments are super funny. Trilby cracks open the safe in no time, but it's completely empty. Assuming that the family solicitor got to all the goods first, he attempts to make a hasty retreat, but the window is sealed shut. He assumes it became jammed, taking the only other route and heading to the front door. My suspicions that Trilby wasn't alone are confirmed as he runs into a mustachioed man in the hallway who promptly screams at the top of his lungs and scrambles away.
Oh my, wow, that door sound effect, oh my god.
Have you heard it before?
Oh, absolutely. It's the old AOL AIM instant messenger sound effect.
A lot of the audio resources in this game were fairly commonly used in projects all over the internet. The developer himself says that he unapologetically stole all the music from RPG Maker because apparently they stole it first, which is hysterical. The developer left a very distinct imprint of his personality on this game, and he seems like a wild guy. Trilby realizes that the man ran away screaming because he's wearing a mask on account of the whole being a criminal thing. He removes the mask, revealing his beautiful face. All 30 pixels of it. I actually really like his design. The whole outfit is very Inspector Gadget-esque, and the characters just scream 90s. Trilby is unable to locate where the man went, deciding to ignore it for now and get to the front door. The last thing he wants is to get caught in the middle of a B&E, but the front door is locked too. There's no latch, no chain, no deadbolt, there isn't even a keyhole, yet the door won't move an inch. Trilby continues to search the house in the hopes of finding a way out, running into another stranger. I hate this man. His name is Philip, and he's a total douchebag. He claims that he's been stuck in this house for days, immediately assuming that it's all Trilby's fault. After Trilby expresses his confusion, Philip begrudgingly explains everything. Now including Trilby, there are 5 people trapped inside this house. Every single door and window that could possibly lead to an escape route are sealed shut. Nobody can escape. Philip even tried climbing the garden wall and burrowing underneath it, all to no avail. He doesn't know how or why they're being kept here, all he knows is that they're prisoners. I absolutely love this core concept. Being trapped inside a mysterious mansion with a bunch of people you've never met and having no means of escape is a great setting for character interactions. Think about if you were in that situation. Not knowing anyone, having limited supplies like food and water. The confusion and panic that would set in is a super interesting thing to explore, so I'm excited to see how they handle it. Not only that, we need some kind of reasonable explanation for how everyone is trapped here in the first place. There's no explanation as to whether this is rationally explained or supernatural yet, but the lack of a keyhole on the door makes me lean towards the latter. Philip heads out, leaving Trilby to gather the other 3 residents for a meeting in the lounge. We briefly met one of them, AJ, but he seems to have disappeared. All the other residents know is that he was the first person to get trapped here nearly a week ago, and he refuses to reveal any personal details. Trilby finds Simone, a famous news reporter, and Jim, a local student, in the upper hallway and up a tree, respectively. With AJ nowhere to be found, the remaining 4 captives begin their meeting. Trilby gathers some information and tries to hypothesize about what's going on. Philip is fairly adamant that no one can be trusted and that one of the people here must be behind their captivity. His reasoning? The person doing it is crazy. I hate him so much. Simone tells Trilby that they function as a team, working together to escape, and that means no secrets. They need to know the truth about why he's here at the mansion of a deceased man. Trilby doesn't even have time to answer. Philip has already deduced that he's a cat burglar. How can someone be so smart and so stupid at the same time? The group doesn't seem all that concerned about having a criminal in their midst, even allowing Trilby to probe them for information despite refusing to reveal any details about himself. Simone showed up here in preparation for shooting a documentary about the DeFoe Manor. The manor has been the center of disappearances for decades, and the network figured it would get viewership. Simone showed up before her camera crew, exploring the grounds and finding that the way back to the front yard had completely disappeared. Philip is a treasure-hunting grave robber that heard DeFoe Manor was built by a famous explorer named Roderick DeFoe. His wife died during childbirth, with Roderick and their son mysteriously disappearing over a decade later. Several other members of the DeFoe family took possession of the manor, all of whom were buried in a tomb beneath the building. Philip came here in the hopes of breaking into said tomb and looting generations worth of wealth. Jim is a teenager that climbed the wall of the property with some friends. They always heard scary rumors about the place being full of cannibals. One friend bet him he wouldn't go inside. The power of peer pressure led to Jim being trapped inside with no way out. With all this information at his disposal, Trilby poses a theory. The house seems to be trapping people individually, not in groups. It didn't trap Jim's friends or Simone's camera crew. Trilby seems to think that this house is sentient in some way. How else would it know to temporarily leave a window unsealed just long enough for Trilby to break in without letting the others escape? That's an interesting theory for sure, and I think the developer set it up really well. It could have been cool to try and deduce it yourself though, instead of just having Trilby state it out loud. It could be something as simple as giving a few different dialogue options and having the player choose which one they think is the most reasonable. If it's the wrong choice, the other captives could shoot it down and the player would be allowed to try again. Obviously that's super rudimentary, but I don't exactly know what capabilities there are with the AGS engine. Phil continues being the absolute worst by accusing Simone of being in on a big reality TV show where they trap strangers in a house and film them, all because she's associated with television. That gets shut down pretty quickly for being idiotic, and Simone suggests that everyone split up and search for AJ. But that's a task for later. Everyone is exhausted, and searching in this state wouldn't be productive. The next morning, Trilby wakes up to a loud sound from the foyer, apparently. No sound effect actually plays, but Trilby says he hears something. Upon emerging from the lounge, everyone is dead! Oh god! Wait. Philip is part of everyone. Never mind, I'm cool with this. A large figure draped in an old-fashioned leather apron and welding mask trudges into the room. They're coated in blood, holding a machete, and headed straight for Trilby. He demands to know who they are, with the murderer shockingly removing their mask. It's Trilby? Trilby awakens on the couch, realizing that it was all a dream. A very disturbing dream, but a dream nonetheless. I really like the panicked awakening animation. It's charming and reminds me of Stardew Valley. I think this is a cool scene to garner some more attention after a lot of talking during the end of the last chapter. It throws us right into the action with a cool fake out, although I'm sure some people won't like that it was all just a dream. That wasn't the ending reveal though, so I feel like it's more excusable here. After ensuring that his compatriots are not actually dead in the lobby, Trilby begins his search for AJ. Upstairs, one of the doors had visibly been tampered with. It seems as though Simone broke in, finding herself in a library. According to Simone, she had the same exact dream as Trilby last night, but when the killer was unmasked, it wasn't Simone beneath the mask, it was still Trilby. Putting this aside for now, it sounds like AJ has yet to be found. Hopefully having another set of eyes will help out. Jim is in the dining room reading a copy of Treasure Island instead of helping, and Philip is just past the swimming pool, standing in the middle of the yard surrounded by several giant holes. Two of them are placed near the wall, meaning Philip really did try tunneling out of here. The others are scattered about randomly, leading me to believe that he's been hunting for the tomb. Now that we're outside for a good while, I want to mention one issue that I have with the art design, specifically the colors. The mood in this game is very dark and mysterious, but all the colors are bright and vibrant and generic. I feel like I'm looking at one of those attention-grabbing, clickbaity children's YouTube thumbnails with the bright green grass and the bright blue sky. It's a super minor thing, but I feel like I should mention it. The current colors are almost distracting to me because of how out of place they feel, but it makes sense since this was supposed to be one of the developer's first serious themed games. His previous works were supposedly a lot more comedically inclined, which would explain a lot of the bright colors and funny observations when examining things. Philip is mulling about with a freaking metal detector, and he doesn't plan on parting with it anytime soon. Why does Trilby want it in the first place? The way you're supposed to get your hands on it is by showing Philip that the tomb could not be here, and the only way to do that is by grabbing a book containing the floor plan of the manor from the library. I don't like how this was handled. Each of the differently colored books has the same name, but they are all different. All of them are completely useless for right now except for these two little yellow ones on the left. Now the problem with this lies in the game's cursor. The icon is an outstretched hand that is very difficult to be precise with. I found the best way to examine things was by aligning the middle finger slightly below what you want to look at, but even that can be frustrating to align. There's a book in a wardrobe later in the game that I was only able to highlight by looking at the title of the items that my hand was hovering over because the hitbox was so small. This bookshelf is similar, except you can't use the text at the bottom as a guideline because every single book has the same name. Making there 5 or 6 books instead of 2 would be a super easy fix for this. After finally getting the dang book open, Trilby quickly learns that the tomb is beneath the front yard, not the backyard, meaning Philip won't find anything until they get the front door open. But there's something odd about this map. The game doesn't state specifically what, but if you look carefully, there's an extra room connected to the kitchen. I think this is a great hint for a super interesting puzzle later on. Having Trilby mention that something seems off, but forcing the player to figure it out on their own is a clever move. There'll be more hints about this secret room later on that are more obvious in case you missed this one, but the map is my favorite. Once Philip sees the map, he angrily hands the metal detector over to Trilby, who uses it on the pipe leading to the pool. Earlier, Philip mentioned that he found a pipe while digging, so I guess that's supposed to be our reason for searching here. The logic doesn't flow completely naturally for me, but it's not too bad. Following the pipe to a pile of dirt reveals a switch that can drain or fill the pool, sitting in the middle of the yard. This is a really weird house. Now that the pool has been drained, Trilby climbs inside, and at the bottom is AJ. The man is dead, with flesh so pale and colorless that it matches his shirt. His throat's been slashed open, and he's been tied to the bottom of the pool to keep him concealed. Trilby is visibly sickened by this, almost as sickened as I am that so few people know who the band Shoe is. Yeah, that's right, this video's sponsor is my own personal agenda. Stay with me, okay? Especially if you're into music. A few years back, I got a random Spotify recommendation for a song called Egg by a band called Shoe. That was the goofiest name for both a song and a band that I had ever heard, so I clicked it immediately. I was expecting to get a laugh, and instead I had stumbled upon an amazing indie rock band. About a year ago, I joined the official Discord server in the hopes of learning more about them. I learned that they gained popularity in 2009 after the Australian government funded the creation of an EP, and Felix Colgrave, of all people, animated a music video for them. Over the next 14 years, they would release 3 albums, and needless to say, I was a huge fan. I've actually used their music in videos because they don't issue DMCA strikes. So when I found out that members of the official Discord server were given permission to crowdfund merch, I got pretty dang excited. I got even more excited when I was asked to talk about it on here. There's currently a Kickstarter going on to fund CDs, vinyl records, posters, stickers, shirts, and more. Some of the artwork was designed by Cyan Cora, a close friend of mine that you might recognize from my Bokuro video and dozens of others, and I think the final products turned out really great. If that interests you even a little bit, I'm going to leave a link to both the Kickstarter and several of my favorite songs from the band on both YouTube and Spotify. This is the only opportunity to get officially approved merchandise that we'll probably ever have for a band this size, so any support is hugely appreciated. Trilby quickly gathers everyone he can find to let them know about his discovery, and Philip is very quick to accuse him of murder. I personally believe it's because Philip killed AJ. I know I'm biased because I really don't like the character, but just think about it for a moment. His behavior here is suspicious, sure, but he's also the only person who is confirmed to have encountered that pool draining switch. He dug the holes, and the switch was buried in a pile of dirt from said holes. He had to have encountered that pipe while using his metal detector. Maybe he was just careless when he buried the switch, or maybe he knew exactly what he was doing. For now, my money is on Philip being the killer. Simone is open about the fact that she thinks Philip is overreacting and that Trilby is innocent, which is good. As a thanks for that, Trilby tells her that he truly believes that nothing other than the supernatural could explain their current situation. She flat out calls him stupid before leaving to try and investigate AJ's death. Trilby heads upstairs to go grab Jim and tell him about the whole murder thing, and we hard cut to the bathroom where spooky things are occurring. Trilby wakes up once again on the couch in the lounge. Jim is there waking up Trilby on the gentleman thief himself's instructions. Trilby doesn't seem to remember this, but apparently he told Jim about AJ and said he would look into the history of the house, then ask the kid to wake him in the morning so he can get an early start. I have some mixed feelings about this transition from day 2 to day 3. I like the scare in the bathroom and think it was fairly effective at catching the player off guard, but I do kinda wish we could have walked there ourselves so that it was more of a surprise. It was probably done to try and indicate that it was another dream sequence, and sure, it was cool, but then it forces Jim to give this really clunky explanation as to what just happened. It just feels a bit unpolished. Trilby heads outside, finding that his car is sitting in the middle of the courtyard. Nobody seems to know how it got here, but at least Trilby can get his lockpicks that conveniently fell out of his pocket. He makes sure to hide one in his tie like he always does, just in case. But if he always does it, why didn't he have a lockpick until now? He had his tie. The car showing up is a cool mystery that I'm looking forward to learning about, but it definitely feels at least partially included as a convenient way for the lockpicks to enter the story. For now, that doesn't matter. Let's get lockpicking. The now unlocked nearby shed contains a 2-person saw and a pickaxe, of which Trilby can grab the pickaxe. Since we saw that mysterious extra room on the map yesterday, I figured it'd be a good idea to try smashing the wall down. There's a freaking dungeon back here with chains on the wall and everything. The game actually plays music here, and it remains on for the rest of the investigation. Before, it was almost entirely silent, with the developer saving music for the more dramatic scenes, but I do like that there's something to listen to other than just the basic ambient sound effects. Upstairs, Trilby is only able to unlock one door, with the other one seemingly being blocked or deadbolted. It's a bedroom with Roderick's diary in the wardrobe. The window across the room looks to be dripping blood, but apparently these are just scratch marks in the red wallpaper. The window is one of the few in the house that you can open since it can't be used to escape, giving us another clue as to the intentions of who or what has trapped us here. Trilby would use his grappling hook to clear the gap to the locked room if he could, but that big old tree that Jim was climbing earlier is in the way. Jim is in the library doing some research and trying to be helpful, so Trilby recruits him to cut down the tree with the 2-person saw. With the tree gone, Trilby can use his epic thief gadget to cross the gap with style. Wow, that is not how a pendulum works. Putting the roof tile that Trilby swung off of at the top of the screen instead would have completely fixed that. Now that he can access the final locked room, Trilby does the only logical thing. He grabs a long dead child's teddy bear from said child's bed. After stealing the kid's favorite toy, he rifles through their diary too. What a swell guy. At this point, we need to do a lot of reading. Trilby needs to read a newspaper clip he got from Philip, a newspaper from the front door, the child Matthew's diary, a written history on the DeFoe family from the library, and Roderick's diary. I'll try to compress all that I learned from those sources into as short of a summary as possible. Matthew DeFoe is the son of Roderick DeFoe, the famous explorer who had this manor built in the first place. His dad thinks that he's weak for showing interest in the arts instead of something manly and testosterone-fueled like joining the military. Roderick hates Matthew's birthday because it's the anniversary of the day that he unleashed unleashed a horror. One day, Matthew opened the big no-no door in the kitchen, finding a boy around his age chained to the freaking wall. They became friends, but Robert gets upset if he ever catches them talking, lying to Matthew and saying that nobody is behind that door. Oh boy, it's editing Ben. I accidentally say Robert instead of Roderick several times here. Just ignore me, I meant Roderick. Robert was distant from Matthew for a long time, but grew quite close to his son as the boy neared the age of 15. On Matthew's 15th birthday, something happened that involved the boy behind the door. Roderick claims that he was removing the horror that he unleashed from this world. That day, Roderick and Matthew disappeared, leaving behind nothing but bloodstains. My current theory is that when Roderick's wife died in childbirth, she gave birth to twins. One kid was evil or something, I don't know yet, so Roderick left him chained up either because he couldn't kill him or because he was unwilling to kill him. Trilby's current theory is that Matthew was schizophrenic and that Roderick killed him before disappearing to avoid the law. For now, he wants to find Matthew's body. Maybe it'll provide some answers, but how to find the dead body of a long-dead child? I know, the dark arts! Trilby grabs a book on the occult from the library, learning that using spooky magic, you can locate anyone. You need to take a possession of theirs, tie it to a stick like a fishing rod, dip it in salt, and wave it over the place that your target sleeps. Trilby does this to the teddy bear, following the weird contraption back to the dungeon where he uncovers the bodies of both Matthew and Roderick. According to Trilby, Roderick's ribs show indicators of being damaged by a slashing weapon. Suddenly, there's a smash from all the way on the other side of the house. Trilby investigates, finding a wooden idol that used to be sitting inside of a sealed glass display. Touching the idol causes him to black out. Trilby wakes up in the middle of the floor wearing the same apron and mask as the killer from his first dream. Philip is dead next to him, meaning we win these, let's go! Simone knocks Trilby out cold with a metal pipe or a wrench or something. When Trilby wakes up locked in a shed and without any of his belongings, it becomes apparent that this was not a dream. Did Trilby kill Philip? He attempts to leave the shed to go warn the others about the idol, but Simone is standing guard outside and refusing to let him leave. Despite not seeing the moment of the murder, she believes that Trilby is the killer. Apparently, he chased her and Jim while in that costume before appearing unconscious next to Philip's dead body. To try and convince her to let him go, Trilby attempts to convince Simone that he was possessed by a ghost associated with the idol. To be fair, that's probably what happened, but it's Simone we're talking about here. She's not going to believe anything supernatural. Trilby claims that the same thing happened when he killed AJ. Never mind the fact that this possession seems to have been caused by touching an idol in a sealed glass case that was only broken after AJ's death. She doesn't need to know that. Trilby says that the ghost talks to him late at night, trying to make him do terrible things. Its interference causes him to black out, waking up in strange places covered in blood. Trilby begins to prey on Simone's emotions, describing the inescapable guilt and successfully convincing her to return his tie to him. It was taken away so he wouldn't be able to hang himself with it, and Simone should hopefully believe that he plans to use it to end this problem once and for all. Unfortunately for her, Trilby removes his lockpick from the seam and opens the door. Weirdly enough, Simone is nowhere to be found. I really like this scene. Trilby was absolutely lying about hearing the voices of the ghost and killing AJ, but it's ambiguous enough that the player could easily believe it, especially because this game's ambiance is constantly full of whispers and footsteps, even when everyone is already in the same room together sitting still. Now that Trilby is free, he heads inside to check on the idol. I think now is as good a time as ever to mention one of my favorite little background details, as it's most obvious right now. This painting of Roderick in the dining room has been changing every single day, with the subject aging more each time. Right now, he's a rotting corpse. The totem in the room with the fireplace has been returned to its original spot on the table, but the glass is still broken. I am not touching that, so I decided to head out and look for Jim. But Trilby can't find the kid. Hell, he can't find anyone. As he searches the bathroom on the far side of the second story, Simone walks in on him, stating that she believes him. She knows he didn't kill anyone and that he was lying to her in order to get her away from the shed so he could escape. She believes him because while she was gone, she saw the killer again. Well, that would certainly help. Simone believes that she wasn't spotted, but that's clearly not true since he's right freaking there. No, I'm just dead. Oh my god. Remember when I said I made a huge mistake by not reading the game manual all the way through? This is what I meant. Trilby gets stabbed in the chest by the killer and the game completely resets to the title screen. I read that there was a save button in this game, but didn't make a habit of saving because I was going to be doing everything in one sitting. I skipped right past a very clear warning that you can absolutely die in this game, so it's best to save as often as possible. This means that my 2 hours of playtime have been completely eradicated. Oopsie. It took about 25 minutes, but I managed to speedrun my way back to that scene, save my game, and pull the rug from beneath the killer's feet to knock him out. Underneath the mask is Jim. We cut to day 5 without a nightmare or anything this time. Apparently Jim had the same experience, waking up without any idea what on earth happened after touching that idol. If that isn't enough to convince Simone that something supernatural is going on, nothing is. According to some of the books on the occult in the library, this angry spirit can only be destroyed if they get it back to its old body. To do that, they'll need the body, and that would require knowing who the ghost is in the first place. It's time for some deductive reasoning. Yay! This whole scene plays out as a discussion between Simone and Trilby, with Simone asking for Trilby's theories before agreeing or disagreeing with him. This is exactly the kind of thing I was looking for when I was talking about letting us make deductions during the meeting on the first day. Instead of detailing the whole song and dance of figuring out the truth, here's what I learned after completing the discussion. Roderick had more than one son, as I suspected earlier. His wife gave birth to twins, 20 minutes apart. After the second child was out, she died. Roderick blamed that death on the child, keeping him chained in the basement and treating Matthew as his only son. Since the kid wasn't raised or educated in any way, he was, well, I don't exactly like how Trilby put it, so let's just say insane. Trilby believes that such a level of insanity could have led to the kid not being able to differentiate between people, but I disagree. He clearly treated Matthew kindly so he could at least tell father and son apart. In the last entry of Roderick's diary, he talks about finally destroying the monster that took his wife from him. He beat the kid half to death in what Simone assumes to be a drunken stupor, leaving the boy to be found by Matthew. Matthew tried to bandage him up only to be killed by the boy. I don't totally like the idea that he didn't recognize Matthew, but it's kind of implied that he got to see the boy less as he got older, so maybe the older Matthew looked a lot more like Roderick? The boy lived long enough to kill Roderick as well before succumbing to his wounds. As a ghost with so few shreds of sanity left, he attempts to kill everyone who enters the house, believing them to be Roderick. I have a lot of issues with this. The idea as a whole is neat, but I don't like how nothing is concrete. That did lead to the deduction section, which was fun, but the conclusion that they drew has a lot of holes, from not recognizing Matthew to literally dressing up for a murder. If he knows nothing about how the world works because of being trapped in a dungeon his entire life, how would he even know that a machete could kill someone? And who buried the bodies? It just isn't a wholly satisfying explanation to me. Trilby uses the costume to create another spiritual detector thingy to try and find the kid's body, eventually locating it up 2 flights of stairs underneath the floorboards. According to the book in the library, the body needs to be brought to a place of fire and death alongside its old clothes. Trilby puts the corpse of a dead child in his pocket before prancing down to the room with the fireplace to set up his ritual. The book states that Trilby needs to read a giant passage of spiritual gobbledygook. It comes with a massive warning that summoning a spirit can bring forth other unquiet spirits who will haunt those who hold their possessions. Woo! If you just attempt to bring the ghost back, he'll stab you and you'll get a game over. To actually stop him, Trilby needs to bring both Simone and Jim to the ritual room and give them Roderick's gun and Matthew's bear, respectively. If you're missing either of those components, the ghost will kill everyone. Even if Simone is holding a freaking gun in its face. She's just too scared to kill it, but Roderick isn't. By having your compatriots hold the possessions, they will be possessed by Matthew and Roderick. Roderick tries to convince Matthew that the boy needs to die because he doesn't understand human ways, while Matthew tries to convince Roderick that he could have been normal if he had just raised him and given him a chance. This is never resolved as Roderick aims his weapon. That was so anticlimactic for a gunshot. The boy falls into the fireplace. His clothes catch on fire and the flames spread to the rest of the house. The entire building burns down, with everyone escaping through the front door and getting help from some conveniently present police. Well, everyone but Trilby. Simone and Jim mention him to the police, but he's nowhere to be found. As the building burns in the background, Trilby makes his escape on foot. A gentleman thief can't exactly get too close to the authorities. He ponders if destroying the ghost was the right thing to do before taking his leave. I was pleasantly surprised by 5 Days a Stranger. The controls and visuals were severely outdated by today's standards, but the story was fairly interesting. I liked the characters for the most part, and many of the puzzles were really well crafted. A few of them were a bit hard to understand the logic behind, but it was all doable in the end. The music and sound design were a fairly heavy detractor for me, since most of the game was spent in complete silence excluding footsteps. I think that would have come across as more creepy if the visuals weren't so bright and fun instead of dark and moody. Because there were so many odd plot holes and seemingly important details that were never revisited, like the house trapping people individually and Simone and Trilby having the same nightmares, I decided to try out the developer's commentary that came alongside the game. I played through the whole thing again, this time with the developer leaving comments in the top corner of the screen, revealing his thought process during development. Apparently this game was originally going to be a short story, and the setting was in outer space as a crossover between a bunch of his previously existing characters. Also, I cannot get a read on this dev for the life of me. His comments bounce between playfully self-deprecating and completely egotistical in a way that completely confuses me. I have no idea what is a joke and what is not, but that kind of makes the commentary even more entertaining to me. One moment he might point out a plot hole that he didn't account for or an incorrect detail that he couldn't be bothered to fix, and the next he'll completely contradict himself by mentioning a small detail he added and what lengths he'll go to assure perfection in his games. I'm pretty sure it's sarcastic, but you can never really know with text. The commentary addresses some of the things I was confused about. For one, it confirms that Philip was possessed and killed AJ before hiding the body himself when he woke up. It doesn't explain how he reached the idol though. It also explains that the dev didn't think through the introduction of Trilby's car beyond keeping his lockpicks away from him. His explanation? Ghosts? I honestly figured the car wasn't thought through after it was never mentioned again. Trilby literally left his car at the crime scene right after Simone and Jim mentioned that he was there, so I'd be shocked if the police didn't use that as a lead to catch the famous cat burglar. A few of the comments actually confused me more. I assumed that AJ ran away from Trilby at the start because he was scared of the mysterious masked man, but the dev says it was because he thought Trilby was the ghost. When the heck did AJ encounter the ghost? Were there more people here before us and AJ was like the last survivor or something? There's just so many loose ends that were never tied up. Despite all the confusion and plot holes, I actually really enjoyed this game. It was short, it had an interesting concept, the puzzles were fun, and the characters were really engaging to interact with. It's my understanding that this game has 3 sequels, so I might have to check them out in the future to see how much the story's improved. When I was researching for this video, I learned that the developer is an author now, so that gives me some high hopes. I hope to see you all again. Have a great rest of your day.